Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. We're here at the Wine School of Philadelphia. He's Keith Wallace. I'm Rich Shane. Dawn Ranieri's here, and this is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Keith, welcome to the podcast.
I am actually really happy to be here today. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
The Wine School of Philadelphia. How did all this get started?
Well, it's an interesting topic because it all started largely because I was tired of traveling to Italy and to California for my work. I was a consulting winemaker. I ended up living in Philly for no other reason than the airport at that time was the best airport on the East Coast. So I didn't have to live in California. I didn't have to have that massive plane ride from LAX to Rome every couple months. I moved here because I'm originally from the East Coast. And to be honest, like I say, I talk too fast. I'm too grumpy for anywhere else in the world. Living in California was weird for me. Living in Italy was weird for me, although the Italians like me way more than the Northern Californians because they enjoyed my grumpiness. Yeah, and my really awful sense of humor. So that was great, but I moved here and I fell in love with Philly. I fell in love with a place that was just so much more scrappy than where I grew up. I grew up in Boston, and yeah, I just knew that this was a place I could do something really special. And it was so open to running wine schools. There have been wine schools in this city since I think at least 1967 or so. So this was a city that had a really great wine culture that nobody knew about. It was a beer culture. Everyone knew about that, but it was a wine culture underneath that had this layer of government control over it that really didn't allow it to rise that far.
How did that love of wine come to you?
Well, it was really simple. I actually was working as a consulting winemaker for a local winery, along with my clients in California and Italy. And they just wanted me to teach a class. And it was weird because I was like, Eric, who is the owner of the winery, I was like, dude, I'm going to charge you my consulting rates, which are $250 an hour. This is back in 2000. And this is going to cost you way more than you can possibly ever make. But he said to me, he saw something in me beyond being just his winemaker, as consulting winemaker. I was such a quiet kid. I mean, I was really, in no place was I ever comfortable being in public. Like if we were out to a restaurant, I would just not talk. If there was people at the winery, I would just go down into the winemaking facility and just hang out there, wait till everyone left. I just was really shy. He saw something and he wanted to push me, and he paid a fortune for me to teach a class. And so I did it, and I fell in love with it. I actually fell in love with something that I should back up one second. I should explain why I fell in love with it and why I'm an idiot for not knowing I would fall in love with it. My father's a minister and my mom's a teacher. And, neither of these things appealed to me. My mother was a special ed teacher. My father was a Baptist minister. My grandfather was a Baptist minister. So I was like, I'm not doing that. But as soon as I taught a class, I could feel it. I could preach the thing that I loved the most and the thing that people got wrong. What I realized was that people got wine wrong all the time, and they thought it was this elitist beverage, and it's really not. It's something very, very different. It's been a part of our culture, all of our cultures, before even we had organized religions, before we even had really functional languages. We had wine as part of our culture. That's 4,000, 6,000 years of history. And you just can't ignore that or just like allow that to be something that only rich people got. Because the people who are making it, well, we're all, working class, middle class people. And, that's the people who should be enjoying this. And so I started off there and people just fell in love with me as being a communicator of this. And I loved it. I hated being in public, but I loved the draw. So yeah, and that's still to this day. Still hate hanging around with people. I'm still super shy, but I absolutely love teaching it.
That wine for you,
Yeah.
was there a first wine you tried? Was it going to a vineyard?
Oh,
What bit you?
oh God, that's okay. Okay, so this is just got to show how trashy I am. So there's two. There's two. The first one was Mad Dog 2020 when I was a dishwasher, when I was 14-year-old dishwasher at a little restaurant in Salem, Massachusetts. And no, I did not like that, but it was the first time I ever got drunk. And so I like that. And I did not drink wine or anything really until I was a sous chef. I was a sous chef at a restaurant in Beverly, Massachusetts, and God bless Carol's soul. God bless her. She was about 8 years older than I was. We ended up dating. She was a waitress, and she taught me everything about wine. I got to have like the 1982 Frogs Leap Vineyards Cabernet back, that's how old I am. And and like early Opus ones, like the 84s and 86s. And so that's where it came from. It came from me being just a degenerate employee of a restaurant. That's it. Nothing magic. Everyone else has a probably better story than that, but that's mine.
Everybody has a story. You, in your experience of wine, it must have been something beyond the vintages, the names, the experience of, as they say, glass to lips, right?
Yes, yes.
How did that translate for you?
Well, so because of my brain, I'm a little bit different. I did come across it. I didn't come from the top down. Like I didn't have a family that drank wine. I did not have those experiences. A lot of people have those experiences. A lot of people in my trade and other winemakers have had that where they were introduced in this magical way. I actually learned from the ground up. I learned from working hard. I learned from being a dishwasher, then a chef, and then leaving the industry. I was a journalist. That was my original degree. I was a journalist for many years. I worked, during the crack epidemic in Baltimore. I was there. I was running a news department there. I worked for National Public Radio in Boston. I did a lot of that work, but I always, always, always had that thing missing. And it was actually the real working with your hands element. I missed that. And so when I went back to school, I went back for viticulture and enology at University of California system in Davis, which is Northern California. And I got my master's degree largely because I knew that was the only way I could actually work in the wine industry. And why was it the wine industry? Because it hits all these different things. It hits all the things I love about life. It's hard work, but it's also creative, and it's also something that people seek out. And so it was in many ways pragmatic in the beginning, and I was a good winemaker, just like I was a good chef, but I wasn't a great winemaker, just like I wasn't a great chef. And I learned that very quickly, which is why I became a consultant. And so and from there, I was still seeking, like I was seeking what it was about wine that I loved. I love the process. I love making it. I hated the part about having to talk about it or selling it because as a winemaker, you always had to be out there until the public. Hated that. It was only when I started teaching that I actually really found the thing that makes me the happiest is that I can take something you may not even know anything about, and I can introduce it to you in a way that you're going to love it for the rest of your life. And I'm going to be able to change how you think and feel about something for the better. I'm really good at that. I'm really good at bringing people to something and in a way that maybe they had a different opinion about it, and I'll change their opinion by the end. So you give me a semester of your life, and I will change how you think and feel in a fundamental way. So, and that's my magic, and that's the thing that I love about wine because it allows me to do a lot of interesting things with my life and with other people.
You communicate connection.
Oh yes, oh yeah,
And there is that barrier with no matter what we drink, the coffee you drink,
oh yeah.
the beer you may drink, the spirits you may drink. In this case, the wine,
Hmm.
if you find a connection to the grapes, to the vineyard, terroir, provenance, if you find some sort of, I have this connection,
Hmm.
that's where the understanding begins. That's
Hmm.
where the love and appreciation for what people do and how hard they work. And it's not just when Dawn and I are out
Hmm.
and we'll go to a winery,
Hmm.
the obligation where
Yeah,
we have to take the tour
yeah,
because
yeah,
we've been on so many,
yeah,
and it's how many more fermentation tanks can we see and
yeah,
how many more crushers can we see. But when we are able to be communicated a connection,
yeah.
and I think that's from telling stories too, and I
Right.
think that's what I'm hearing you impart
Oh
to
yeah.
how you help and navigate people to the same passion of love and love of wine that you have.
Well, it's actually a little. That's 100%. You are 100% right. That's really observant of you to do that. But I take it one step further because I cannot the the way I can actually get you or anybody really in love with something to really engage with it is I have to start with you. Like you have to actually understand how you taste. You have to actually understand the mechanics. I need to be able to like and depending on who they are, it depends on how they learn. Like I mean, I can tell them and they can learn, but most people they have to experience it. Like I can show you how you can even change how you taste so you can taste more. Just like understanding your own palate, understanding that how unique you are or how normal or how similar you are to anyone else. Like, so that where's that aggregate information? How do you, what you understand is what you taste, what you like and dislike. I will take that and I will break that apart. I can, that's kind of in some ways like the military, like the Marines. Like I can actually, the first thing is there's no you in this, right? Because there's a totality and understanding of how you taste. And I can actually take, and one of the things I rip apart from anybody is like, I don't care what you like. And one of the things, if I'm one of the first things in front of a sommelier class, right? Because we've been teaching, and you think about this, 20 years, 4 semesters every year, sold out class of 25 people every semester. And that's just one class, right? They're sitting here, and the first thing I tell them is that no one cares about what you like because no one does. Only you care about that. And why do you care about that? What's the mix mash of all the experiences and beliefs and fears and everything else? Why you like what you like and what you don't like? If I can get rid of that right away and let you explore the things you don't like, you're going to actually all of a sudden your brain is just going to open up and you're going to start seeing all kinds of things. I have had people in class who hate the smell of flowers. Flowers, hate it. It comes down to it, actually, somewhere in the middle of the program, after a couple weeks in a semester long program, they're going to come and they think it reminds them of their mother. And simply that. I've had grown ass adult men like realizing something about what they like and dislike is so embedded within their brains. And I do not want to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, was not my intention. But what they come to me with is, that, I've had, a dude who is a retired Secret Service agent who was a puddle after the program and just hugged me and said, like, this is the best thing that ever happened to him. I'm like, of course, your job was to catch a bullet. I mean, of course, it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. Catching a cork is a lot different than catching a bullet. Much better option. But that it is like I have reached into everybody and like kind of like change their expectations first and foremost. Because yeah, going on those walking, as you know, because you've been in the industry, you've done this amazing podcast for so long that yeah, of course, you're invited into the back rooms of every place, and that gets boring after a while. What doesn't get boring is actually when you can all of a sudden realize something brand new. for yourself, and a new way to unlock pleasure in the world, and like realizing there's a whole vista up in front of you that you didn't even know existed. And it's one of the things, one of the reasons why I'll always say, like, if you want the best advice you can ever get, I can ever give anybody, is just ignore what you don't like or lean into it and ask yourself why. Are you afraid that everyone else will think you're silly for liking this? Is it just not cool? Or is it something else? Like, what is it? Is it maybe you're a super taster? Maybe it is, you know, even a point actually of maybe your saliva drip rate in your mouth is such that you cannot deal with acidity. All these things come into play, emotional, cultural, science, everything to like why you like what you like. And I'm gonna dip in there. Like if I had you for 8 weeks, I would just dip into that brain, rearrange it a little bit, and send you off on the world. And yeah, and you would thank me for it. And that's what, yeah, 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 that's what I do. That's what I do.
Where did the idea, you talk about 20 years
Yeah,
here for the wine school, but you're doing the consulting. Where did the idea of taking all that knowledge and harnessing what you love about
yes.
teaching, when did all that come about?
Well, it came about. Well, it was in 2001. It was here because I had to change. You know, traveling as a consulting winemaker is hard. Um, I I have always been a person who was a terrible employee. I've always worked for myself because I am an awful, awful employee. I'm always too opinionated. I think I know better than, because I usually did, than my bosses. So I had to work for myself. I also wanted, what I also realized was that I work in a billion-dollar industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry that is fractured amongst all the states because every state has their own rules. So you can't have a very large businesses don't really grow, but a lot of small businesses do. And so what I wanted to do was just create an environment where I could actually launch a lot of small businesses, so people could actually enjoy the life I was living and continue to live. Because I mean, I do. I mean, I drink for a living. I drink, I talk, I teach, and I have a very nice life, and I really like sharing that ability. And I have, um, as you guys can see behind me, obviously on the podcast you can't see, but there's 4 bottles, and they're just like and they're in a nice little stand. And no, those are the first 4 of my students back in 2004 who became winemakers and own their own wineries. And they've all succeeded. And that was just from the very beginning. And I've built so many different businesses out of the school. Because what people really want is, I mean, they want to be able to enjoy their lives and actually work in constructive ways and have fun doing it. And here's, I think all 3 of us here around this table actually know that feeling, right? Like you did yourself. Like, and I'd be very curious at how you lived, like you've been doing this for so many years now. I mean, at this point, 6 years. That's amazing. And that's important. And like you got to do it. I got to do it. I want other people to do it too. That's just me. I like that part of what I do. I also love being grumpy. And I actually get to say all the things that nobody ever says about wine. So I can be real critic, and also be the biggest advocate too. And I have been called so many bad names by so many people in the wine trade for the secrets that I've told over the years in writing and in classes. It just, it makes me the most, I love being that curmudgeon. So, yeah.
I'm curious as to what kind of secrets that
Well,
people don't want. Obviously, they're secrets,
yeah.
but
Well, okay. So the former, he passed away a couple of years ago, but the former owner of Kendall Jackson, I had written about how we use oak chips instead of oak barrels to flavor a lot of our wines, including a number of their wines. I wrote about this in the publication, national publication, and then I also was interviewed on national radio for that same issue. And the amount of anger and the phone calls I got because everyone assumes that wine is being aged in barrels, giving those flavors, but oftentimes, if it's an inexpensive wine, those barrels are over $1,000 a piece. You can't sell your wines inexpensively if you're aging. So we will always age it in stainless steel tanks, adding wood chips to it to give it that same flavor profile, so we can sell a wine that's less expensive. This is something that's well known. I got a lot of hate from my peers from that, a lot. When I introduced the concept of what's called mega purple, this is about 15 years ago, I was writing about this. We use in a lot of high-end and low-end wines, we'll use grape concentrate to increase the fruit flavor and also the alcohol content of wines. This works is really effective in like low-end wines, like things like Yellowtail. They're the ones who innovated this, but also at the very high end as well. Using these gives us structure and body that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I was writing about this, and like most people don't like the idea of having things added to your wine. And like, let's be honest about it. It's important to know, like, if you like this style of wine, how it gets there. And okay, like needless to say, a lot of people hated me for that. Yeah, so I get a lot of that, and and I enjoy that. I actually, when people get angry at me, it just makes things more fun for me.
It's fuel to your fire.
It's also a great way. Hey, look, if you don't want me to say these things, um, ignore it because then I can, But every time someone gets angry about the truth I tell, and then and then it gets disseminated out there in the world, and that's fantastic. Yeah, please get angry with me. Yeah. I mean, I like being the small guy in these fights because I usually win. I even won against the World Wrestling Foundation, when they tried to sue us, which is a whole different story. But yeah. Yeah.
What does the World Wrestling Federation have against wine?
They did not like that I actually ran a series of events called the Sommelier Smackdown.
Ah,
Yeah, and they had trademarked the term Smackdown, and then I turned around and tried to trademark the term Sommelier Smackdown, and then it turned into a circus. Delightfully so, because I just made it national news. For even South Park did a little bit of an episode on that whole issue, and it was fantastic. I At that point I knew my life had reached its peak that I actually influenced. I was on South Park. Come on. That is the peak that is peak Gen X right there. So yeah.
pardon the interruption. Thank you so much for listening to Fermented Adventure the podcast. Could you do us a favor? Hit that follow button. It makes it easier for others to find us, and it helps us climb in the rankings. Take a screenshot of the podcast, post it, tag us, and let everyone know that you listen to the Fermented Adventure podcast. Now, back to our podcast. We talked about, prior to hitting record, technology.
Oh yeah.
AI. And
Yes.
when you talk about oak chips, when you talk
Yeah.
about adding juice and concentrates, it's the technology that becomes more prevalent in what winemakers understand that they can either make a better product, they can get more volume, cost
yes.
effectiveness. I mean, there are all these things, as you well know, that go into a bottle of wine.
Absolutely.
And that technology, maybe some of the traditionalists, the estates, maybe they poo-poo that. Maybe they look and say, we don't do that, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we do.
Yes.
We don't want you to know that we do
That's
because we
absolutely
don't want to break that third wall, so to speak, of your experience and your love of our wines. But today, there's so much technology available. How, as a winemaker, wouldn't you want to grasp it? And then we get into, as we were talking about, AI. AI now has, when are the grapes ready? And what should we be fertilizing? When? And you can,
Yes.
it's vast. It's anything that you can come up with that now can be applied to wine and wine science.
Oh, absolutely. So we're 50 years into wine being two things. Well, it's actually three. One, it's commerce, right? We make something to sell. It's also, it's this agricultural product that is the only agricultural product that is sold that is that millionaires invest in, billionaires buy, and everybody who works in the industry is well paid. Like, it's the only kind of agriculture where if you are working in a field, you're being paid $30 to $40 an hour. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing else like this in the world. American wine production is just, it's a way for people like myself to have a pathway to wealth. That's what it is. But technology has always been a part. We've always hidden it, though. So here we are, we're sitting at the Wine School of Philadelphia. Here we are, and if you look around, literally every single inch of this place was actually built by hand, most of it by myself. Like, we have a wall of corks that was hand built, but every single cork, and we're looking at this as that it is over 50,000 corks that are, came from classes here. You have,
I'm confident to know that's all the
yeah.
bottles you drank.
Yes. No, I don't teach all the classes, but no, and I don't. It's funny. I taste. I don't drink because I drink for a living. If I drank as much as I could, I would be in a hospital. So yeah, but so here we are in this pretty beautiful place. It's comfortable. It's lovely. It's all brown tones and wood tones and handmade. Everything, even even the table you're sitting on is handmade. So. But everything is built on technology. Like the school would not exist if in 2001 I didn't realize that the new thing called the internet was going to be really, really important in a way to disseminate information and actually be able to sign people up for classes. So we started from the very beginning, um, and largely because I was a winemaker, because we always behind every winery there's always is the technology. There's always a lab in every winery you've ever go. They never show it to you, but it's there because we are science-based. We always have been. And we're this mix of agriculture, science, and passion. And people like to see the passion. They don't necessarily want to see the science. So yeah, but AI builds on this. AI allows us to give us a very good idea of what we should be doing or what we could be doing. Because largely we live in a world where we have so many invasives and we have so much regulation that we need to be able to make something. How do you make something natural? Like something authentic and good, without doing harm to the world? That also is going to actually allow the winery to succeed and pay all these wonderful people and keep that moving and allow a whole country to rise up, and be, having this be affluent and healthy in an environment that people want to live in. That's our goal is in wine trade, is to be these people of change. And to do that, we need science. And it's the subtle things. It's how do you maintain healthy organisms in your soils? Um, and how do you do that and actually still create a very healthy crop of grapes? And that those grapes actually could create wines that people want to drink. Like this is the goal, and it's not an easy one when you're dealing with so many different kinds of invasive species, global warming, and that's it's not just because global warming is one thing, but it's actually the changing a climate within a vineyard that actually because we live as winemakers, we think in decades, not in days, largely because it's going to take at least 10 to 20 years for a vineyard to come up from planting it to designing it to actually having it in full production. That's about 10 years. So we do think, in the products we make, we're not making them for now. We're thinking about them before they're not even fruit yet. I'm thinking about how this is going to taste like in 10 years from now. So this is like, we think in decades, not minutes, not days. This gives us an opportunity to do some really interesting things, but we need science behind that. I need to know what pH is. I need to know what kind of critters are in my soils and what they're going to do to my wine. What kind of bacteria load do I have? And is this bacteria load going to be beneficial to me? Can I be what we call a lazy winemaker, i.e., not do less intervention to create a better product and have something that so less inputs, less not manipulating things, using less things, less sprays. How can I actually plant vines and then never spray them with insecticides? Or what about dealing with rodents or birds? How do I deal with these in a way that I'm not going to harm the environment? These are all things, and this is what AI can help us do, and it helps a lot because we can feed in a lot of data. It's amazing. Yeah. And so these things, it's the quiet things. It's how do we do things better? And sometimes we have to think beyond ourselves. And that's what AI kind of helps us to do, like to see where we're making assumptions where we shouldn't make assumptions.
I now fully understand where you as the teacher and me as the student come here to the wine school
Yeah.
and fall in love with wine, in love with the science, in love with the romance and the history,
Oh yeah.
as you explain it and as you put it into perspective, what are some of the classes now being offered, and what can people expect as far as ways that they can improve their knowledge and appreciation for wine?
Oh, well, there's plenty. So first of all, I'm giving you a brain dump, and this is like the unfiltered version. So in classes, we have a large series of classes. You do not get a brain dump. Like we do everything from Wine 101, which is an introductory class that's a 90-minute class. They're really designed to break your assumptions and beliefs, right? And have a great time doing it. So those are fun, really fun, because the other side of teaching about wine is you get to be saucy. You know, you get to say, because it's a room full of adults. And so you get to say off-color things. You get to say, maybe, borderline foul things, which I'm notoriously known for. There's plenty of people who have shared, there was entire groups of people who share things that Keith has said in class. And they're always, 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 sometimes they repeat it back like, oh, I really shouldn't have said that. I cannot believe I was never canceled. Like, I really am surprised. Yeah. But however, here I am. Um, so, but then we also run our professional programming, and that's where we start to get to the really good stuff. That's the stuff that we're really nationally, internationally known for. And our programs actually helped launch the National Wine School, and they now use all of our programming on the national level. So if you're going to university and you're taking a wine class, there's a very good chance you're using our programming, which means you're also overpaying, but that's on you, But like for instance, the National Wine School offers our program, our core sommelier program, and it costs more to take it online than if you came here. Because in Philly, we're Philly. We're not going to charge an arm and leg. We're going to charge what, like a decent price, enough to make it, it's just painful enough for you to sit there so that you're paying attention. But, it's like, it's $1,100 to run that, take that class online. And that does not include, you still have to buy wines. And in class, it's about like $900. And that's a full semester program. And that's what we're famous for. And what's in our even more famous is our students, because they're the ones who ends up taking over the world, and they have. My rule of thumb is that I want my students to make twice what I make within the first 10 years of their, of when they launch their companies, launch their careers. I want to be the poor one. Yeah, and I'm not poor.
You mentioned the fact that, all right, I can take this online, but I still have to buy the wines.
Oh yeah.
I come here, the wines are available that we're going to taste.
Oh yeah.
We are in Philly.
Yes.
We are in Pennsylvania.
Oh yes.
What is the difference like, and having access to some of the wines that everywhere? I mean, you're in California, you can get any wine you want.
Oh.
But we're in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
How does that work for you as access to these wines?
Oh, I have all the controls. Well, first off, the wine school from the very beginning has run a massive wine cellar. Like we have, and it's actually broken up into 3 different places actually, because it's so large. We have our 10-year cellar, our 3-year cellar, and a 1-year cellar. So where like the wines there are sourced for like introductory classes are like 1 year, but we have a whole, like we run a 50,000 to 100,000 bottle cellar at any given time. Right now it's even bigger, because right now there's potential of being of tariffs, and so we actually had to we bought an insane, and when I mean more, we spent an extra $20,000 in the last 3 months just to make sure we had enough Burgundy and Bordeaux to last for the next 2 years. That's crazy. It's a lot, but we source from everywhere because legally we can source from anywhere we want to, and we do. And we have relationships everywhere. So I have the most comprehensive cellar in the country for anything. Do you want to actually do a class on obscure grape varieties from Napa Valley? Do I have like 10 different Charbonneaus that I can show out of Napa? Of course I do. Do I want to do a vertical vintage of, let's say, Chateau de Sales out of Pomerol? I can do one from 2009 onwards. Do I want to do a class on South African wines, which we're going to be doing next week? Of course I can. I have, and not just like the things you expect, but the things that really matter to South Africans. like aged Chenin Blancs, like not just Pinotages, but like really great Pinot Noirs from Walker Bay and beautiful Bordeaux style Cabernets from Par. Like we have everything. So yeah, oh yeah, no. So I can show anything I want to show. Do I want to show a reductive Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough? Sure. Do I want to show you a Sauvignon Blanc that one of my students who actually runs a winery in New Zealand? Of course I can. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, deep. Dude, nobody can there's no place in the world, or at least in this country, where it has a deeper wine cellar than here at the school.
You're tasting, you're enjoying, you're experiencing wine,
Yeah.
but you're also making them here.
Uh-huh.
You're
Oh,
teaching people
yes.
how to make wine.
Yes, I am. And okay, we started that. We also started a beer brewing program like 10 years ago, largely because one of the things I really hate that I miss is the hands-on. And teaching is amazing, but I miss being able to make stuff as much. I do a couple consulting projects, but it's all through the phone now. Like all I have to, they just mail me the stuff and I tell them what to do, and I either call them or email them and walk them through. So now being able to have I have all my contacts in California and in Washington State, and I get them to source. I get wines from either Napa or from Red Mountain in Columbia Valley here, uh, which no one else can get. Get it here, and my students are making it. They're actually making using like a quarter ton to a half a ton of like the best fruit you can get in the country, making wine from that. Taking 6 months of that. That program is a 6 months program. We lose money on it every year, and I do it because I love it and because I don't want to charge people what it would actually cost to do that. Because, but it's a part of our advanced sommelier programming. It is the thing that I say that you don't understand wine until you take that program, because you don't understand, because you at that point you everything from the fruit to every single step in the winemaking to the very end, and all the problems and all the choices you make for that whole process, you're doing it. The student's doing it. I'm making sure they don't screw up. And then at the end, they have wine, and they have these wines that are going to be as good or better than a lot of professionally made wines. And those wines, they'll drink them for the next 3-4 years, and they're going to understand what it takes, what it takes, what thought, what ideas we had in the beginning, how those change the wines and how they reflect 5 years from now. That is a mind-blowing thing for anybody. And it's so much fun just to do punch downs. Like the magic of fermentation is so great. Everything and every screw up, everything that they do, it all is just magic.
I'm looking at this space,
Yeah.
and you talk about the amount of fruit you're bringing in
Oh yeah.
to make wine.
Yeah.
Is that done in this space or somewhere else?
Oh, it's done right here. So this space, it's set up like a classroom with stadium seating. And so, which is no, so what we do is, if anyone's ever seen the TV show Dexter,
Sure. A lot of plastic
a
around
lot
the
of
walls?
plastic, yeah. Those kill like those perfectly said. So yeah, plastic goes up. So right now it's this beautiful like winemaking, like looking like a winery kind of here. But when we're production, plastic goes up on the walls. All the Oriental rugs get rolled up. Everything, yeah. And then it's designed though actually to be a very cleanable surface. So everything, we did replace the original wood floors with tile, that looks like wood, so that we can do this, so that we have a cleanable surfaces everywhere, and we can sanitize everything down. So yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, everything gets done here. And downstairs, as you guys were downstairs, it's out the Warren. It's a Warren down there. It's like head floor to ceiling equipment. Right next to as soon as you walk down the stairs, all the wine barrels, those are all some of my student wine barrels and tanks, and everything just gets rolled out. Yeah, we're very efficient with space because we're downtown, like we're in Rittenhouse here. We're in a refurbished, rebuilt row home, and which is pretty impressive because we are the only wine school that on the East Coast that has, outside of one in New York, that has its own facilities. So we're definitely the only one who owns their own building and able to do that. So yeah, which is in itself says a lot about what we do here, and that we are one of 50 different wine schools in this country, but we're only one of 2 that actually runs at the level we run at.
You use the T word, tariffs.
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
you talk about getting ahead of certain things.
Yes.
As a thought leader, as somebody who is on the pulse of wine, we see the tariffs come, we see them go, we see them on hold, we see them.
Yes.
What are those impacts right now with tariffs
Yeah.
that you're seeing? And what do we expect, let's say you talk about 10 years, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to let, but 6 to 12 months,
Yeah.
what are the impacts?
Well, okay, this is the issue. It doesn't matter if the tariffs come or not, because I mentioned that the wine industry thinks in 10 years. Well, winemakers do, and wine importers and everyone else does as well. So, one of the hard things when you're planning, if everything's about planning, because wine is always about planning. Like, for instance, if I'm an importer of like French wine into the United States, and I hear that there may be tariffs coming up, well, then what I'm going to do I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to try to get everything onto bullets right away, because that's a risk, though, because that means from that point to being on the shores of the United States is about 2 to 3 months. So I can't control it, right? As soon as I put it on that ship, in containers in that ship, I am now obligated to pay. So if within those 2 3 months, if tariffs come in, I'm going to have to pay those tariffs, and those tariffs are going to guarantee that I lose money on that. So that's a risk. But what I'm definitely not going to do is definitely not going to be bringing any more wine into the United States. I'm going to say, look, I'm not going to make money. I may still go out of business, but I'm not going to be in debt. So that's what they'll do. They'll take the chance of not bringing it in, which means that if you only bring wines in like once or twice a year, which most importers do, at most 4 times, then we have at least either somewhere between a full quarter or half a year where they're not bringing wines in. That means because they're the only ones that contractually can actually import those wines don't exist in the United States anymore. And they may never again. Because if they find another home for those wines, if there's another markets that will take those, then that's where they're going to go. And they're not going to ever come back. So if you have a favorite bottle of French wine or Spanish wine or Italian wine, there's every chance that you'll never see it again in your life. Just keep that in mind. That's the change. That's what we're saying right now, because this is business, and businesses don't like taking outsized risks. I'm not going to spend an extra 30-40% if I don't have to. If I have another market I can sell my wine to. So that's where we're at right now. So you actually easily, and now if an importer, say, doesn't bring their wines in, then the distributor who's usually around 40 to 60% of their inventory is going to be European wines. Even if it's only, they say, 30%, you no longer have access to those wines. You can no longer sell those wines. Now you've taken a 30% haircut of your inventory that you can sell to restaurants, wine shops. What's your alternative right now? Well, you're going to be laying people off right away, even before it even becomes an issue. You're laying people off. So what about the wine shops that only now have no resources to any of these products? What are they going to do? See how our economy is all built, right? Because capitalism is one of the most amazing ways of controlling money and products flow. It's not top down. But it creates these beautifully organized systems. But when the systems get disrupted, we're screwed. And that's where we're at right now. It doesn't matter if there's tariffs. You're already screwed as a wine drinker. You're already screwed. You already are. That's why, like, I spent $20,000. Before we started recording, I point out that I'm Scottish. And the Scottish, we're two things. We're mean and we're cheap. And, me spending $20,000 because I know that I'm going to need it in 2 years from now, because I'm not going to be able to afford it, because the prices are, even if there's no tariffs, the price is going to skyrocket, largely because there's more demand than there is supply. So no matter what happens, the Scotsman is spending a huge amounts of cash, so he has inventory so when I want to run a class on French wines next year, I can do it. And I can do it at a price point that people from Philly can afford. Because right now I'll charge like $80 for a class. $80 for a class where some of those wines, if you had a glass of it, would cost you $100. I can do that because I'm in Philly, because I'm a really good wine buyer. And our classes are awesome, and we'll book them. Like that's how we make money. We charge less, make it for a better class with better wines, but we fill out all of our classes. So I don't have to worry about, charging a fortune. But if I didn't do that now, I'd have to charge somebody probably like a year from now, 150 for the same class. And I don't want to have to charge people in Philly $150 to be able to taste Burgundy. I want them to be able to have something that's awesome, so that next time they talk to a small A or something, that they'll actually be able to like, yo, I had that. I had that at the wine school, and I had it for, because the same wine is going to be going for $300-400 on a wine list, and like, oh, I had tasted that in the wine class, and and I didn't pay nearly that. So that's what I like. I like that. See, again, I come from I'm a blue collar kid. I grew up on food stamps. I appreciate working hard, but I think that we all deserve to have great shit. Sorry about that. I just beep. I worked so hard not to swear on this.
You were fine. And the question then becomes, how does the international wine market provide opportunity for the domestic wine market now to satisfy that demand?
Yeah. How does the international, how are they going to help us?
Well, no, I mean, essentially what you're saying to me is, look, the inventory is going to dry up.
Yep.
At least maybe for the next couple of years. And as you alluded to, some wines never may come back.
That's right.
You've got plenty of wine producers here in the States.
Yeah.
How does that affect them, and what opportunities?
Well, actually, the hard piece. So there's all kinds, because when we're talking about change always is unpredictable. Like, we have no idea. I'm giving you the best case scenario or the worst case scenario, what already is happening right now, because the things have already started in play months ago. And by the time people listen to this, they might actually be feeling it, like going to a wine shop and noticing certain things aren't there anymore. And then that, by Christmas, people will probably really know. But the hard thing is that if for our own winemakers, and I'm dealing with this right now, I'm having a lot of conversations about this. We're worried because so we need to have distributors, right? By law, every state, you have to have a distributor to distribute your wines. If we don't have that, if they start shrinking or going out of business too, because they've lost 30% of or 40% of their income because they no longer can sell European wines, we may lose that too. So we may actually even start losing the ability to get wines to where they need to go. And so on the East Coast, we may even start seeing that. Now, that's a worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that this, and this is, let me say, this is how I think of this. I think when I see something happening that's really bad, like for instance, when COVID hit and it decimated, to be honest, we lost about $1.5 million in investments in small businesses because they all went out of business. That's what COVID did to us. We rebuilt that within 2 years because we saw what also was happening is that as all these businesses went out, even some of them were beloved friends of mine, there was opportunities being made for people to come into the market. That's what's going to happen here, is that this may be a short-term pain, but it will allow new companies to come in and actually find ways of actually getting those French wines and European wines back in. That just means smaller companies, they're more dynamic, and again, a whole different generation. And that's what I'm focusing on, really, is how do we step into that breach where there might be this point where you have a lot of bloodletting in the industry. How do we fix that? And how you fix that is actually building up new relationships, getting these wines back in. But because the old companies are gone. Let's bring in new. Let's figure out different ways of actually getting wines into the United States. Let's figure out ways of getting those wines from the West Coast to the East Coast. Let's figure these things out. There's going to be a lot of money in that. Just like there's a lot of money in trying to figure out how to get different kinds of silicone made in the United States for products that are built specifically for young mothers and like the baby products that they use, right? Because that kind of silicone is only made in China right now. And I have a friend of mine who's trying to figure out how to do that. We can do that, and we'll do that in the wine trade too. Like these are things we're capitalists. We're gonna, capital gets lost and then it gets gained again, and then you actually work on it. So this is going to be very exciting. It's going to be bad for some, and it's going to be really good for others. And always you want to be on that side. In the industry, you always want to be on the side saying, this is what's going to happen. Let's figure out how to make this better for everybody because we're going to be the winners, and the people around us will win because of that. And yeah, and that's how, I'm not afraid of losing $1 million. I'm afraid of not being able. Because I want to be that person to lead people towards success. So yeah, because no, we have a great industry, and but these things happen, and just be willing to take the bumps. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yep, no,
We've talked wine industry.
yep.
Let's talk a little wine.
Yeah.
What should people be drinking now? What excites you in the industry?
Oh,
Things that are coming out?
well, the world is so big and vast, and I always, whenever anyone tells me what's my favorite wine, I'm like, don't ask me that question because I have no idea. There's a lot. Okay, so what's happening right now? What's fascinating is that winemakers and wines in general, and especially actually places like Argentina, are getting so geeky about the things that they love. Like you are right now, if you look at even a large producer like Catena has been well known for decades now for being great wines. But right now, what they're doing is they're just doing these single vineyard stuff that's not expensive, right? Things that you should be expensive, but that aren't, like so that you can, and they are just producing all these single vineyard bottlings of this weirdest, coolest stuff. They're also reaching back into their history, and then Argentina, but also in Chile, like Chilean wines you're seeing coming from way north and way south in this, where modern wine isn't being made, but that used to be made in like the 1800s. They were being made, and they're just using these old grapes called peixe, which are just funky and weird and lovely. People are no longer that worried about being perfect, and they're really embracing their history and like or reinventing it. So you're having some really cool, weird, lovely stuff. And as all these wines are accessible for the market. So like this grape Paish, which is Pais, it was like the first grape of America. Like it was the first grape ever grown here. And it's a weird, lovely little weird thing. And the nice thing is that Americans are lovely and weird people, and they enjoy lovely, weird wines. So that the whole Napa model of big monsters, which is what I was trained in, like if you make when I make wine, I make big monster red wines. That's what I do. That's what I know. I cannot make little funky little things. That just violates everything I hold dear. I love them, but that's the kind of things that are coming out right now. And even if you live in PA, you can walk into a state store and you can find these weird little bottles for like 15, $20, and they're well worth it. People are just doing weird stuff. You see winemakers in Oregon, you making wines with Pinot Meunier, which is this weird, weird variant of Pinot Noir, and it is weird. I mean, it's kind of like like you have that. If there was a member of your family, they're the one that no one would ever invite to the birthday party because they were too weird. Um, it's it's even making it as gross because like it's actually hairy. It's like like even touching the grape, the vines themselves, they're like hairy. It's just super gross. But they make this weird, lovely wine, and that they're saying, all right, enough of the Pinot Noir. Let's make Pinot Meunier instead. So I love the fact that the weird things are starting to happen, and people are actually embrace that.
I've had conversations with people about beer, wine, bourbon, rye, all the whiskeys and things like that, that sometimes everybody wants the newness. Everybody wants something different.
Yes.
But what about just staying in that lane and perfecting like a Burgundy
Oh, yes.
and not having to say, you know what, we're going to do something crazy, and why don't we put the Burgundy on a ship and let
Yeah.
it slosh around
Yeah.
and see what happens. Is there something to be said in the industry of wine about just saying, let's just stay here and make excellent wine without having to feel like we're always experimenting, trying on the outer edge,
Oh, yeah.
and just continue to give people what they want? And that's what our identity is.
Well, absolutely. Well, that's actually so this is a conversation I'm glad you brought that up because that's a conversation I have with in every semester in every single core foundation, the small A program we do. When I'm talking about the history of wine, like that's what Europe does. They always have. Their wines are a part of their culture and a part of the society, and they do not change. Um, you can have a glass of Chablis today, and then if we actually could time travel back 300 years and have a glass of Chablis, it's going to taste the same, right? They have been that for a very long time. The thing is that we as people change. Like the American palates changed so much in the last 20 years. Like I can tell you because I was there that 20 years ago. What primarily, if people were drinking a pink wine, it was white Zinfandel, and it was sweet. And the majority of wine drinkers, that was their go-to 20 years ago. Now, if people are drinking pink wine, it's going to probably be Provence and be bone dry and absolutely delicious and beautiful. Also, probably cost like 4 times as much as that white Zinfandel did. So we change. We went from being America went from drinking Chardonnay that was big and buttery to being austere. Now they're going back to big and buttery again. We keep evolving. We used to love big monster cams with so much oak that it tasted like a candy bar, and now like a restraint is in. Like people don't want that anymore. A winery could do that, but then you find yourself with your audience shrinks. And if the goal of every winery is to keep your people employed and to keep yourself in the mix, then you do have to tweak things over time because people change over time. And that's actually a beautiful thing. Let's not experiment. Like in beer and whiskey, you have to be more experimental because you always have to have that wow factor because you're an engineering product. We're an agricultural product. We're not the same thing. Engineers, as we all know, love to innovate, right? Every phone we have, every computer we have, anything that engineers are involved in is going to have things that are like brand new and frustrating at the same time. We all know this because we all have phones. Um, but in wine, we make changes in like maybe 5 years from now we'll have to change this because people are they're less interested in these oak aging things because when we're making it, it is literally 5 years before people are buying it.
Is it the palate, or is it the marketing, or
Oh, it's all of it.
is it getting along because we don't want to be
Yeah.
the white Zinfandel drinker? I don't want to be the Bartles and James guy anymore when
Yes.
everybody's drinking seltzer.
Right, exactly. Which is exactly why seltzer is around. Ah, God. Yeah. So there is because there's two different kinds
Tell
of
us really how you
drinkers.
feel about seltzer,
Oh,
Keith.
well, it's like all of that stuff. So like there's booze to get drunk on. Like that's there. Okay, there is that whole line, right? There's that booze and that whole line of things, which is that, yeah, I mean, come on, seltzer is just sadness in a glass. I mean, come on. All of this is just largely for, like largely for kids who just want to get drunk. And they need that to actually, that social lubrication. And that's okay. That's a whole marketplace. That whole marketplace is actually being destroyed. It was first seltzer. They were but now it's edibles and it's weed. Like that's the thing that is gonna, it's all that entire thing is just collapsing. But fine, great beer, craft beer, great whiskeys, great wine. They're not being affected by any of this. And this is a difference. So you have to innovate at the lower end to capture market attention. You have to. In 20 years ago, it was putting a freaking kangaroo in a bottle of wine, and everyone's like, oh, critters, right? That was what got people attention. That and booziness is like, oh, wow, yeah, no, that's it. So that's that. But whereas in the upper echelons, like, and we're not talking about a lot more money. We're talking the difference between a an $8 bottle and a $15 bottle. That's what we're talking about. This is the difference between generic commercially made plonk and then fine wines that starts around $15 a bottle, even less in some places. And but that alone is yeah, you don't need to market. You don't need to market, and you don't have the money to market when you're a mid-tier winery. You don't have to do it.
So is it about what people are seeing other people drink? Is it the taste and the palate? Is it, there's so many things that go
Oh,
along with it, right? You mentioned
yeah.
Chile, wines from Chile.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That seems to be something I've never had.
Yes.
I may want to go out and explore
Oh,
that
yes.
funkiness, that weirdness.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm hey,
Yeah.
I spoke to Keith.
Yeah.
Chile's
Yes.
where it's at.
Yes.
Now there's going to be a run on Chilean wines here and across the world
Yeah.
because you said it.
Yeah.
But that could create a whole different world and a whole different fad versus are people drinking it because they like it? Are people drinking it because their palate's changed and they're done drinking what they
Yeah.
drank last year?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So people are afraid of in wine because it has so fraught with culture. Let me tell you something about wine. Wine is so powerfully culturally that in my position as running the wine school here, I have got to meet so many people outside what I should ever expect. I get to be in the same rooms with senators, governors. I get people talking to me who are like leaps and bounds, like smarter, more culturally adept than I am. But because I'm in the wine trade, I'm their peer. Like there's a CEO I'm going to be meeting next week, next Monday. Look, just because I emailed him and I had questions, and he's going to like drop everything he's doing of a multi-billion-dollar company to hang out with me, to buy me lunch, just to answer my questions, because that's the social cachet. Not that I'm that special. I'm not. I should not be able to have a CEO at my beck and call. That is like I am far too trashy. I am far too much of a hot mess for that to ever happen, except that I'm in the wine trade. And he happens to be a former student of mine. Outside of that, that's how powerful the wine trade is. That a middle class son of a preacher man can actually phone up CEOs and have them drive hours out of their way to meet him. That's what the power of the wine trade is. Not me, wine. And that means the reason I tell you this is because the wine trade and wine etc. is so fraught with cultural landmines. People are afraid of like saying they like the wrong wine. They're afraid of having an opinion. They're afraid of why they don't like something that they should like. My job is actually to tell them why that is and why it shouldn't matter to them and why they like certain things and they don't like certain things. Like I can lead them through that way. But that's a hard thing. Of course, people are afraid of that. People are afraid of like seeming like they're a newbie or not socially adept. Why you'll actually see if you go to any major steakhouse where there's like where there's business being done, they always have the most expensive bottles on the table, even if they don't like it. And you'll see that across the board. Like, it's not that they think that wine is good or they like it, it's because it just says something about them. Like, oh, I'm important, so I therefore have this bottle of wine on my table. None of that really, I try to diminish that as much as possible, but that's one of the reasons why people buy what they buy. Another thing is, yeah, people actually they fall in love with things. They fall in love with a story. Like if you ever travel someplace, like one of my favorite places I've ever traveled to is the Priorat region of Spain, largely because I got to hang out with winemakers, got really drunk and drive one of their tractors through there, and we had a great time. And Priorat is this weird place. It's all cliffs. And it's all hills, not a single flat place in the round. So it's scary being there. But I was driving a tractor through this vineyard, drunk out of my gourd. Fantastic. Am I ever do it? Am I always going to love Priorat because of that reason? Absolutely, because I have a great story to tell about it. I love the wines. I love the people. That also drives it. It's who is it that is the person who you hear about wine from. So if it's somebody like me and you like me, you're going to like what I'm talking about. But what about those, all those, and here's the problem with the wine trade. Those guys who like just talk down to you, like you've run into these people all the time. We all run into them. Whether they're a sommelier or they run a wine store or whatever, wine writer, and they just talk down to you. You're just not going to like it. Like you're not going to find a love of it. You're just going to find that you have to do that and act like that to be in wine. And that's another reason why people get turned off on wine, or they only will drink Pinot Noir, or they will never drink a Merlot. These things just exist all the time. But in the end of the day, though, the people who enjoy wine the most, are the ones who just open a bottle and just actually just like, aha, and those are the people who are always changing. It's easy to get on board with the people who just say, "Oh, I only drink Merlot," or "I only drink Pinot Noir." They're easy because then you just keep making the same wines for them. But the people who want to explore, which is the most amount of Americans who drink wine, they love it because they can actually explore whole different worlds in front of them. And there's so many different stories that you can tell about it. I can tell you the origin of the of language of the alphabet just with wine. The two different cultures that and how wines got imported into what becomes Italy and how that changes the dynamic of all of European history. Yeah, that's a great story. Then you can absolutely fall in love with wines from weird places too, like the Balkans and Serbia, and like how those. But the people who love the stories are the ones who actually tend to love all the weird stuff too. Because it comes, all stories have weirdness in them, You can't read a great book without having something that bothers you. Same with wine. There's always going to be something in there like, why don't I like that? Why do I like that? That's weird. Why is it that I like barnyard and Pinot Noir? Like, why do I like that smell that reminds me of my grandmother's garden when she puts down all that compost in there? Why do I love that smell, and why am I liking it in wine? That's disgusting, right? Because it hits weird stuff in you. Yeah, no, yeah, but that's open-minded people who like experiences. But we also have changed over time too. Americans. I was a chef in the 90s, early 90s, sadly. I am old. But I introduced as a chef one of a new dish, a new sauce that no one had ever had. This is outside of Boston, at a very fancy, great restaurant. It was a classical Italian restaurant. We introduced this sauce, and everyone freaked out because they said it was so bitter and so foreign to them. Nobody liked it. I had that dish. I've never had dishes sent back consistently, but then when I put that sauce as a special, let me tell you what that sauce was: basil pesto. Nobody understood basil pesto. Pesto. It was too bitter. And now you can get pesto in anything. You'll get your microwave food from Trader Joe's. It's going to have a pesto sauce. That's going to be the most generic thing. It's the most generic thing. Everyone likes pesto. It's generic now. But yet back then it was innovative and interesting, and it scared people.
We've been talking for a while, and
Yes.
I appreciate your time today.
Oh yeah.
I wonder, because you talked about trends, and where does the non-alcoholic or low ABV world, because we're seeing it,
Oh yeah.
where does that and how does that affect wines and the wine industry right now?
Oh, so I'm curious. Well, the interesting thing for me right now is noticing there's a merge right now happening with low alcohol or no alcohol and THC. They tend to be moving into the same. Somebody I know runs a shop that offers no alcohol, and that's all they do. But I also realize that they're bringing in THC into it. So what I'm seeing here is that I think people like the idea. It's kind of like dieting. Like people like the idea of losing weight by constricting calories and reading books and doing all of these things. And at the end of the day, it doesn't work. I think people are just want to change themselves in ways, and they don't understand that alcohol is actually a core part of who we are. It's either yes, there are people who can't deal with it, who abuse it, like anything else in the world. But I do think that alcohol is a core fundamental element of being human. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence to show that actually we evolved, and our religions all evolved, and our societies all evolved around wine and around alcohol from the very earliest stages of our development. So I don't see this. I do see this as a blip, and I would not put money into it if I was an investor. I'm not. I am personally see this as something that where people are sad and they're trying to find ways and things to actually change their dynamic within their life, which is great. But I don't think that this is. I'm not really that concerned, to be honest. These things happen all the time. These are cyclical, and I'm not actually. Yeah. But I may be. Here's the other thing. I may be completely wrong, and this may be reaching something more important to people, because what is it? Everything that we do when we talk about it reaches people in a certain way, and they have a need for it. So, what need does not drinking alcohol fill? I'm not sure right now. It may just be a moment in time where people feel that they cannot have that or they don't want that, but I'm not sure. Personally, I am very pro booze. Yeah.
Keith, is there anything we haven't spoken about on the podcast today? Anything you want
Oh,
listeners to know more about you or the Wine School of Philadelphia? I realize this
yeah.
is just
Oh,
the first
yeah.
sip
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in many glasses of wine, but what
Oh,
would you like to
all
have people
right.
know?
Well, look, for pure, utter self-promotion, I'm gonna a couple things. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Self-promotion. All right.
that's why
All
I
right.
asked you.
All right. Good. All right. Well, okay. Well, first off, we actually have launched our own podcast where I get to swear and say awful things, and largely my the director of wine education basically just keeps me in tow so I don't say anything too libelous. That's her job, and it's fantastic. So that's called After Wine School. It's not nearly. It's never going to be as big as yours. You know, you guys are awesome, but it's niche. It's niche. But yeah, I break down things like what's going on, like with what's happening right now with importing wines or anything like that, geeky stuff. So that's lovely. Also, yeah, I would also point out that we just announced our Small A Student of the Year. Her name is Anna, and you can read all about her on our website at vinology.com. Every year, we just do we identify one of our best students who's young and coming up in the industry, and she's our absolute favorite right now. And we try to get the word out about one of our students and that's what I'm doing right now. So yeah, and we have a whole write up on her on the website, and I did an interview with her on our own podcast, which is again, you know, I am not nearly as good as you. I wish. I'm learning things, but I appreciate you sitting here with me. So I'm taking more notes than you are today. So yeah. But that's it. That's my shameless self-promotion.
I'm in this room with all these corks. Dawn is here. Dawn, is there anything that comes to mind that you have a question about, or
No, I love the energy in here.
you're an energy
Yeah.
person?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The
Well,
minute I walked in, I was just
yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah. Well, the only way you can get some a room like this is you have to make it yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what we did. We everything was hand built, stripped away. The room we're in right now was in the 1980s was a law firm. And we just tore everything out, took it down to the
The brick.
bricks, to the bricks that are still here, and then we built it back up. And that was just me. Like that was me and two of my instructors. We just rebuilt this whole place into something that feels like this. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's supposed to be that you come in and feel at home and comfortable, and that there's that's the place that you can be you. And here's my favorite thing about this whole thing is that we run a members program, and it's inexpensive to be a member, but the people who come, I like them all. And I am not, I much prefer to be in a room by myself reading a book than ever be in public. Wife is the same way. We're just, but the people who come here make me feel like I'm a better person, and I love it. They make me feel smarter. They make me feel at home in my own place, and they feel at home, and it's really lovely. I really, really, really like this. Like I have offered, because the school has been valued at a really high number. When, investor said, "Hey, this is the number, this is valued," I'm like, "Oh my God." Um, eh, but I'm never going to retire, because the people who come here are the people who find it, not everyone, right? Some people come in here, unlike you, Don, they come in and they say, not for me. That's great. Because the people who come in and say, this is for me, tend to be the very kind of people I want to be around. And so it ends up being really good for me as a person. I have to fight between whether I want to hang out here or hang out with my dogs. And that's a 50-50. I love my dogs. I should also, and my wife, I should mention, I love my wife. I should really point that out. Otherwise I'm gonna get in deep trouble. But yeah, so that's the thing. And so Dawn is she walked in, she's like, oh yeah, that's what I want.
I love wood, so I love anything wood.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and everything is just, it says, hey, you can sit here. You can be a part of this. Yeah.
I see these awards on the wall.
Oh yeah.
I see the accolades, top 5 sommeliers in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But what I don't see on these walls, but what comes through to me, Keith, you're humble.
Oh yeah.
You're down to earth. And that level of pretentiousness that you talk about in the industry, that talking down.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just having a conversation with somebody that's passionate and loves wines.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate your time today. We at Fermented Adventure appreciate having you on our journey and being a friend of Fermented Adventure.
Oh God, yeah.
Next time, we'll do it over a glass or a bottle or maybe a whole cask of wine.
Oh
if
wow!
you like.
Oh yeah! Look, we can make it a drinking contest if you like. I will win.
I'm giving you.
2 against 1.
No,
I will win. I know this.
Thanks so much, Keith.